I'm Lee Lord of Narragansett Beer, and this is the Brewer to Brewer podcast from All About Beer. My guest is Dusan Kwiatkowski of Live Oak Brewing, and he's here for a conversation that goes beyond the brew house and into topics that matter to brewing professionals and curious beer drinkers. First, please visit allaboutbeer.com and follow on social media at allaboutbeer. To support journalism in the beer space, check out patreon.com/allaboutbeer. We'll get into the conversation in just a moment, but first, this message.
First Tea is a proud sponsor of the Brewer to Brewer podcast. First Tea offers more than tea, bringing herbs and botanicals from across the globe to your doorstep. Be it flower, root, or leaf, contact First Tea to find colorful, fragrant, flavorful botanicals. Email info@firsttea.com. That's FIRSDTEA.com to find out more.
I'm Bo Baden from Sherman Street Beer Company in Allentown, PA, and I use Malteurop because the malt works great, tastes great too. We use Malteurop malts exclusively because of the quality and their service. We've been super happy with the overall performance as well. Contact Malteurop today and visit malteuropmaltingco.com.
Today's episode is sponsored by Stomp Stickers. Stomp is a proud member of the Brewers Association that produces a wide variety of printed brewery products, such as beer labels, keg collars, coasters, beer boxes, and much more. Stomp's website features an easy-to-use digital design tool, low quantity orders, fast turnaround times, and free domestic shipping. Visit stompstickers.com and use code BREWER for 15% off of your first order.
Okay, let's get into it. A bit about my guest today. Dusan has been professionally brewing since 2008, working at Live Oak Brewing for 16 years. He went from drinking pills at a bar to snooping around for a job, to doing all the jobs, to overseeing all beer production. After Live Oak's 18th year at the original facility, producing just over 10K barrels of draft-only beer, Live Oak built and moved into a new facility in 2015, started canning, and crested regional volume production by 2017. In addition to managing beer production, he also creates original label art for taproom limited releases and merch items. He designed and maintains the 18-hole disc golf course on Live Oak's estate. Lastly, he makes the best spicy queso in Austin. Welcome, Dusan.
Thanks, Lee. It's going great.
We're doing kind of a bounce back to back. I was getting interviewed from Texas last week, and now I'm bringing it back. So hi.
Yeah, thanks for choosing me.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. You're one of my favorite lager brewers in the country. So a bit about why I chose you. I was out doing a collab with Jester King when I was at Cambridge Brewing Company, and Will Myers and I decided to hit Live Oak because how could we not? It has had such a nationwide reputation. And when we went and we were sitting, drinking lagers and Hefeweizen under the trees, it was just such an amazing experience. And every beer we tried was so spot on. So you're one of my lager heroes in the country. So I wanted to sit you down and ask you some stuff.
Thank you. Glad you had a good time.
Yeah, I did. So for those of us who haven't visited your fairly new facility, can you tell us a little bit about your brew house and your cellar? You guys love your decoctions and your cereal mashes, but you guys don't have a decoction vessel, right?
Correct. Yeah, we have a really nice cooker. It's Braucon Bavarian made brew house, perfect for making Hefeweizen and lagers. Yeah, we didn't put in the decoction vessel. The decoction, it's mostly the Czech pills gets a double decoction, and the Märzen, our Oktoberfest, gets a decoction, but the Hefe is just stepped, and so it's still the minority of mash that we do. But then we started once we were over here, we started doing a lot more cereal mashing with corn grits, which is we're doing one today. We do it at least every other week. Because we're making more cold IPA these days, and the American Pills has corn grits, so it just kind of takes extra time. But the brew house is pretty good size, so we're not like waiting on brews that much. We have enough days during the week right now where we just brew the decoction or the cereal mash on its own day, so it's not a traffic jam or anything. But yeah, no decoction vessel, but there's room for one at some point. But yeah, I think we won't need to upgrade that for a little while until we kind of start making a lot more beer.
Are you guys, so is it a 3-vessel system?
It's a 3-vessel in a whirlpool, and yeah, we go back and forth between the mash kettle and the lauter ton.
Nice.
Yeah, a lot of back and forth, but I mean, the lauter ton is really nice. The plow system is really precise, and so we can get like all the mash back in the mash kettle from the lauter ton with the plow, and it doesn't clog the bottom. So it's just a little extra time, but it works pretty good. Efficiency doesn't really dive, so that's good.
That's cool. That's cool. So how many cereal mashes are you guys doing these days? Like you said, you're doing one for your American Pills, you do it for pre-war, and cold IPA, you said?
Yeah, we're making we started making a cold IPA called Cult that goes full distribution to the grocery stores. And I guess it's a lot of IPA for us, but it's like maybe 20 barrels a month, maybe 40. It's not even a full barrel. We're doing 20-barrel brews on it, which is like we can do like 35% volume safely through the cooker with the calandria and everything. So, which is a good size for our tap room. It lasts us a couple months. And then for some of the smaller volume beers like the cold IPA and the Grodziskie, those are 20 barrels, which kind of has a separate pipeline that uses our old 30-barrel dairy tanks, which is still the majority of the cellars, old dairy tanks. So we just kind of kept those around, and we still use those.
Are those the horizontals?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, everything's horizontal in the cellar. Yeah, fermentation
Everything?
and conditioning. Yep.
Shit. All right. Cool. And how big is your distro footprint these days? Like, are we ever going to see you guys in New England?
We actually started, let's see, maybe about 2 years ago. It was kind of for GABF. We started kind of just sending larger volumes to Denver, and then it's kind of slowly grown. We send a truck every couple months with like 3 or 4 or 5 pallets of like kegs and cases to like Richmond, New York, get some beer, Portland, Oregon, get some beer. We've sent some to Florida. So it's like, and I think North Carolina, we just sent some beer. So it's kind of small bursts. They're starting to kind of trickle out. So I guess, yeah,
That's cool. That's cool. New York's not too far away, so I'll look for it.
Yeah, and then I think it even is going upstate. I'm not sure the full range up there, but yeah, definitely in the city, there's some live oak, it's mostly Pils and Hef,
Nice.
that goes out of state. The Amber Lager a little bit too. Yeah, so and then in Texas, we do Austin ourselves and a surrounding area, San Antonio, Waco, and then we have distributors in Houston, but we don't even distribute to North Texas, Dallas, Fort Worth still. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
Gotcha. So can you run me through, like, for me, a brew day is kind of like choreography from start to finish. And there are like certain marks in the dance that I gotta hit, sort of ritualistically. Can you run me through like a typical Pils brew day at Live Oak?
The total, let's see, yeah, the total mash time is about almost 4 hours. The brew house is, like I said, really nice. It is fully automated up until the whirlpool. Aside from, I mean, the main thing the brewer is doing is just like checking samples religiously and adjusting some pH a little bit if needed. But and then making sure just like the plow comes down but otherwise the mash is automated. So just kind of making sure the cellar tank is ready. Usually we're harvesting yeast the day before we brew, because the way that we harvest, we move from the horizontal fermenter to a conditioning tank, and then we open it up and use our stainless milk bucket and food hoe to like rake the yeast out, and then we brink it. We have like a dozen half barrel brinks, and we weigh them, and then we count the cells and kind of decide how much to pitch, which we kind of, I don't know, we have our, when you're hoeing it out, you kind of have a feeling of how dense it is and how
Yeah.
soupy it is. So there's a lot of intimacy with the yeast harvesting part of it. And then if we were to leave it in there for a couple days, the walk-in is like 30, 33, 34 degrees. So they spend the night in there, and then we wheel them out and knock out through the brinks, which, yeah, we have. And so, the lauter, it's only like an hour and a half. And then, yeah, we do an hour or like 70-minute boils on most of our lagers. And then we've got like the DMS rest calandria that really eliminates all DMS. We've never had a DMS problem, which is lovely. And the wort is super, super clear. And then, yeah, the manual knocking out through, running back and forth through the cellar. And then, yeah, knockout takes about, 45 minutes, and we knock out at just under 50, like 48, 49, and ferment at 50 degrees. And yeah, then it's off to the races.
Nice. What's your oxygenation procedure during knockout?
We have sterile air from the brew house, so we
Okay.
have the steam sanitized air with the Venturi, whatever you call infuser. And yeah, we run it. I forget what the flow rate is on it off the top of my head, but yeah, it's sufficient with just the air for oxygenating all the lagers. We had a O2 tank in line that we would use for lagers, or we kind of used it for like when we do new generations of yeast, because it's like the lagers are maybe 2 or 3 times a year. We get fresh gens from the lab, and then we kind of do we get like a 10 or 20 barrel pitch, and then do like a third of a batch and ferment that, and then do like 2/3 of a batch and then full batch. And it's kind of like a month and a half prop up for new generations. And the Hefe is about the same way, maybe 4 or 5 times a year. But yeah, the sterile air is totally sufficient for the cells.
That's cool. That's cool. So how many strains
It's
of
sweet.
yeast, how many strains do you guys have going at any given time? Because you guys I was reading up on your Czech lager yeast, and sort of how finicky that can be to work with, but how it's so important to you guys. It seems like you guys have a vast array of yeast at your disposal, or that you use regularly.
We do most of all the lagers. Yeah, pretty much all of them. I think maybe there's like a tap room limited beer that gets the Czech yeast, but everything is the 34 70, the Schönraumer yeast. And then the Czech yeast, which has been the same yeast since 97, is the 2278 from Yeast. And
Okay.
it's a Broberg yeast. It doesn't really produce diacetyl, really. It just kind of like maybe accentuates the malt a little bit more. I think it kind of leaves some of the maltotriose. And I mean, with the double decoction, it's, there's a little more sugar in there, and yeah, it kind of kicks it off. And maybe it steps on the hops slightly more than the German lager yeast, but it's can ferment pretty cold. I mean, think 48 degrees. It can tolerate a fermentation at that temperature, but it's not too tricky to work with, but it is different enough to the 34 that we keep using it on the Czech on the Czech pills.
Yeah.
And we've had to make pills with it when like in the summertime if like our flow drops, or we have to like in the spring, early spring, we're trying to prop up the German stuff to brew as much like of all our other lagers and all the fest beer, because we're brewing like 480 barrels of fest beer in like 5 weeks, in addition to whatever else. So it's like sometimes the pills has gotten the 34 out of just necessity.
Yeah.
Like we actually, or and yeah, we don't have any in house right now, because of our end of summer kind of slowness, but we're about to prop up some new Czech yeast. But it's not too much of a pain in the ass having two lager yeasts as long as we're brewing enough total lager. And then the Hefe is super easy. It's on basically a week pace. We just brew Hefe every week, however much we need. Yeah, Hefe super easy.
Nice. What did you guys use for your barley wine?
So that we used this year we used Chico from we got like 4 Brinks from Independence. Or sorry, not this year, but last time we brewed it. We haven't brewed it in a couple years. And that was pretty good. The early days it was 007. We were getting yeast. That's what like yeah, Uncle Billy's, the brew pub that Brian Peters worked at, that we were getting just yeast from back originally for when we were making Liberation Ale. That was the yeast, and so it saw Tree Hugger, but yeah, the Chica was, yeah, that was the last one.
That was such a good beer. I had people mule some back for me. It was like, oh shit, Live Oak did a barley wine. I need it.
Yeah, every 5 years or so, maybe we'll do it.
Yeah, yeah. They tend not to be the biggest movers because people can't drink a shitload of them.
Yep.
Yeah. So it seems like you and I kind of got our start in brewing in like a really similar way. So like you got bit by the bug and started poking around and got on the ground level. Same thing happened to me. So like since your days as a keg washer, what have been some of the biggest turning points in your career? It can be anything from like cool trips that inspired you, or like a cool ingredient that you use, like little light bulb moments or things that panned out in cooler, surprising ways. Like essentially, what have been your level up moments as a brewer?
Yeah, let's see. I mean, yeah, so when I started working at Live Oak, it was just Steve Anderson and Julie Thompson, and they were just doing everything. And I don't remember what the volume was when I started. It was, I don't know, probably only maybe like 5,000 or something, but still a lot, to be, yeah, washing since it's all kegs, just the keg handling is a lot, which is, yeah, what I did for the first couple years. And then, yeah, there was a German guy named Jan who worked at Live Oak for a little while. And between Steve and Julie and Jan, I learned all the pieces of it. Maybe there was a little bit left in the brew house, which I kind of learned from Steve because Steve was leaving to go start Big Ben Brewing in Alpine. And Steve was, I don't know, for those that don't know, Steve Anderson, he started like Waterloo, the first brew pub in Texas. He was the brewer at Waterloo, and he worked at Live Oak for 12 years. And he died like 5 or 6 years ago. But yeah, he taught me a bunch of brew stuff. And then in 2012, I guess he left and I took over for him. So that was kind of a big thing because I was I told Chip that I was up for the production task, and so I kind of got the last little bits, and then yeah, and then I was running it, and I had some really good. I worked with like Nico Tonks, Spencer Tilkemeyer, Drew Durish, Jeremy Inzer, Jason Watkins, Sam Peterson started here. He's still here. Dylan Bickner, who is also still here. I've worked for those with those two guys for like over 10 years. Um, yeah, we just had a really good team. And our distribution department, they're our biggest department, and they were like, um, yeah, I mean, just moving that many kegs around in the world, it was just, yeah, doing our, yeah, it was like a, yeah, it was just a big, efficient draft, uh, yeah, family. It was, um, and then we also during that for like 2012, 13, it was also kind of the excitement of finally building a new brewery, which has always been part of the plan for like, I think even basically when I started, I think Chip bought our new property in 2009 or 10. And so there was always like, we were about to, start building it. And then it kind of took a little longer than expected, big surprise. And, and then, yeah, and then let's see, yeah, and then 2014 started building it. And that was like, it was me and our facility manager at the time, John Luck, and um and Chip. I mean, it was kind of the three of us, and then our MEP and architect teams. And there was a lot of, I mean, that was like, I remember very little from that period of time outside of like work stuff because it was just like every day was just like insane.
Yeah.
Wake up and like go, 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 make sure this is working at the old place, and then we're building in the new place, and all this stuff has to happen, and we only had like 2 weeks of production overlap at the end, which was too close for comfort, um, and pretty scary for, yeah, potentially not having Hefeweizen for, uh, I mean, because Hefeweizen was like, man, we were almost at 7,000 barrels a year of just Hefeweizen at that
Damn.
point.
Okay.
Yeah, we were like maybe like 60, 6,500 barrels a year of draft Hefeweizen at that point, and we were, yeah, 2 weeks away from potentially having zero, which would have been
So are you guys like all
bad.
super
So
bonded now? Like,
yeah, I mean that was, yeah, everybody was like, just do what we need to do, and yeah, we like ripped everything out of the old place and moved over because we had kind of a hard leave date on our old facility,
right,
which was
right.
leased, and we said we were going to be out, and um, yeah, so that was a wild ride, but that was just the amount of shit that we learned that I learned
Yeah.
at that time, because we were also like we went from like moving bags of malt like 4 or 5 times before you use them manually to bulk malt, and we were bringing in like 20-foot bag line shipping containers and dumping them out into our belt conveyor bucket elevator and just trying to like figure all that stuff out. We were just basically, you know,
Jesus
we
Christ.
kind of we kind of played the part of, I mean, we weren't doing like engineering, but we were like, you know, basically pulling as much as we could out of some of these other places that had done something similar and trying to like make it work. So
Yeah.
there was a lot of new things. I mean, all the canning that was new with the new facility basically was the reason for making the new facility to grow into a can package. Um, so there was a lot of new stuff to learn. So that was a big like level up period.
Shit, dude. That's
So
like
yeah,
kind of the biggest level of, yeah.
2012, and then 2014, 15. And then it was kind of a pretty steady kind of, I mean, we were just kind of getting the main beers dialed in. And then after, I think, let's see, 2019, we finally were the last state. We got the right to sell as a manufacturer, not a brew pub. There's two different licenses in Texas, but as a manufacturer, we could sell a 6-pack to you to go from the tap room. Finally, I think we're the last state. And so that's when we kind of dialed in the like 20 barrel size, and started to make more beers, some of which stepped up to 60 sometimes, depending. But that was a big, like, you know, we're just making like hef and pills, and then now we're making like all sorts of, I mean, a lot of variants on pills, but we're making like, yeah, all the different smoke beers that we make every year for Raukfest.
Right.
Yeah, just trying new things, trying new malts, trying new hops, which, I mean, really kind
Have
of
you come across any favorites recently that you want to?
We have we kind of started brewing some like seasonal hoppy beers, kind of like celebration style. Um, we make because we also do a Krampusnacht in December, and so we make a punishment ale, which is a cold IPA. And I started using some of the Red X
Nice.
best Red X malt. I'm just kind of new to red malt. We used crystal malt a little bit at the old place when we were brewing the Liberation IPA back in the day, and the barley wine had some, but I mean, it's not something we've even kept in-house for a long time. So, but like trying that one out, and it works really well for a hoppy cold IPA because we're kind of cutting the malt with corn to make it really light, but then the little extra, it's kind of like this sweet spot of fermentability and sugar, flavor, that it kind of like just like kicks off the citrus
That's
of
cool.
because all the hops in punishment are like Centennial, Cascade, Crystal, Citra. So it really like kind of kicks off the oranginess, and the color's pretty, and it's a new malt, but I think it's a little bit of a secret weapon for cold IPAs,
Nice.
for us. And we also we make a lower gravity, it's like 5% cold IPA for our disc golf. It's kind of our disc golf beer, death putt ale.
Ah,
And we made it last year. We hosted the US Women's Disc Golf Championship in March of this year, and we put in tee pads on the course for that. And we made it back then, and it was just a little bit of Munich. But this year, or this time, because we had a big tournament in October, we made another batch of the Death Putt, and it has a little bit of the Red X in there, and it's just a much smaller amount than the punishment, but it's like just enough to kind of just really balance it out, after kind of like cutting it with the corn. So it's really light. You get a little bit of the sugar flavor, but like you don't sacrifice any attenuation. It's still really dry and bitter, and you can drink a lot of it. So
that's cool. I think I've only used Red X once, so now I want to try it again. All right, we're going to take a short break for this message and then come right back for more of this conversation with Dusan Kwiatkowski of Live Oak.
Did you know that lemon myrtle actually has more lemon aromatics than lemons? Rich aromas, delicious flavors, and bright colors. This is what First Tea's herbs and botanicals can infuse into craft beers. Email info@firsttea.com. That's FIRSDTEA.com to learn more about using a wide range of herbs and botanicals.
I'm Bo Baden from Sherman Street Beer Company in Allentown, PA, and I use Malteurop because the malt works great, tastes great too. We use Malteurop malts exclusively because of the quality and their service. I've been super happy with the overall performance as well. Contact Malteurop today and visit malteuropmaltingco.com.
This episode is also sponsored by Stomp Stickers, one of our favorite partners when it comes to printed brewery products. Stomp Stickers is a reliable resource for printed items such as beer labels and boxes, keg collars, coasters, and more. Visit stompstickers.com and use code BREWER for 15% off of your first order.
Welcome back. All right, Dusan. Now I want to hear some brewer horror stories. That's always one of my favorite parts about talking to other brewers. But so at Live Oak and with your sensibility as a brewer, you guys have gained a reputation for honoring European brewing tradition, which in a bunch of instances means doing things, not cutting corners, taking the appropriate lagering time, decocting, things like that. Have there ever been any instances where it's bitten you in the ass? On what is your advice to brewers when that happens? I call these the oh shit plans. Like when something doesn't go according to plan, or like something really just gets all fucked up, how do you guys over there push through? Other than like you just have to.
Yeah. Man. I mean, one kind of it's not as I'll think about the really bad the really bad stuff, but like one thing that was kind of regular, it was kind of, I mean, it was a lot of work. We to get the Czech malt that we bring in, the base malt, we used to have to get to it was a 40-foot container that was just like loose stacked with like 890 bags of malt that were, it wasn't too much weight for it to be full, but it was, 2/3 full. And so we'd have to basically get everybody that was at the brewery to just do like Egyptian style malt unloading of container into another container and like restack it just to unload the truck, within like the 2-hour window
Yeah.
before they make you pay extra. And that was every 6 weeks maybe. So that was, I mean, yeah, that was I guess it was just kind of like
that blows.
Maybe it's the same as somebody that does CrossFit. I don't know, but those were, and then it was your full day. On top of that, that was just like an extra thing. Whenever the malt showed up.
God, that's gonna give me like nightmares later.
Yeah, I mean, I think we just kind of earned our bulk malt with that because, yeah, we have really nice malt handling now, and we add bags of smoke malt and like, Red X and black malt and small amounts of whatever into the hopper, but we very rarely handle bags of malt anymore, which is nice.
Has there ever been a beer that just like didn't fucking work?
Man, we did have a beer that what was that beer? I don't even remember what beer it was. We had a beer that had I mean, the biggest downside with the cellar is that with our cellar being old dairy tanks is that they don't all like hold pressure. So it sometimes when you're, we'll fill it, we move it into the conditioning tank and then we give it 2 weeks at 40 degrees, and then we kind of start turning it down for its, longer lager. But if it's really like it's summertime and then you're turning it down too much, and then the tank just also doesn't hold pressure, and then you're sucking in some air, we just have to kind of keep topping them off, and it takes a lot of like attention.
Yeah.
And sometimes we've had some beer get like some oxygen gets in there and it'll make some diacetyl flare up. But we have put we did do it with one beer. I don't remember what it was. We were like, well, we're either dumping it or we'll try we shot a brink with some wort of our Kvike yeast, the Hornindal, which we were using for a little while, kind of before the cold IPA, before you could make IPA with lager yeast. We were using the Kvike stuff because it was just so fast and easy. And we put some into the tank and it did like a secondary, Kvike fermentation, and it just like gobbled up all the diethyl and it like fixed it.
That's cool. That's a cool trick. I've never heard of anybody doing that before.
I can't remember what the Ryan would remember. I can't remember what that beer was. Anyway, it
Yeah, it
worked.
doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Shit, dude. Um,
Yeah.
so you guys have a pilot system over there, right?
We do not.
You do not. Okay.
Yeah, the 20 barrels is kind of the pilot
Yeah, that's same with ours.
system.
Yeah.
And it's never too off of something that we've, had success with before. We're not
Yeah.
like, I mean, with like the tree hugger, that was the most different, but it's also pretty simple,
What is that one?
The tree hugger's the barley wine.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And that was, yeah, but like maybe when we first started doing the IPAs, that was maybe a little bit of a difference, but in the brew house, it's not that much. It's maybe just like the cellar hopping was the more of the
Yeah.
learning curve for us on that. So yeah, it's a good, yeah, we rarely have to, yeah, I mean, we don't, anything that goes down the drain is usually some weird freak defect that's not like a recipe issue.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So like from an innovation standpoint, how do you approach creating a new beer? And like how many like brand new beers do you guys do in any given year?
Um, Brand new beers, maybe only like 6 brand new ones at this point. Back in 19, 20, 21, there were a lot more new ones, but we kind of bring back the hits more
Yeah.
now. Um, for every Fest in January, we have 6 beers, and one is usually a new one.
Mm-hmm.
Just to kind of keep them, yeah, just to kind of keep it interesting. Um, Last year we made Rauch Light with Tom and Von Trapp, and uh, this year we're making a Bach beer with Jester King actually.
Nice.
Because we always have a winter party on the same, like usually it's the same weekend where we do Rockfest on Saturday and they do Doom Forge on Sunday. So we're like, and there have always been uh, smoke beer enthusiasts and supporters, and they always come to our parties. So, um, and they were pumped to, yeah, when I brought it up, they wanted to participate. So yeah, they were here 2 weeks ago for making the new smoke beer. But yeah, I mean the Death Putt was new this year. This year we kind of dialed it back a little bit. But yeah, it's not too many different beers. There's
Yeah.
usually a Pilsner variant, which is just kind of more of just kind of the smash style variant where the hops are a little different.
Mm-hmm.
But we have like the Pifko pills, it's our Polish pills, and we use that one. Like that one kind of changes the hops around with each batch, just different blends just to try the different Polish hops. The one we just put it on tap. It's the Grodzicki hop, the Tomiski, and the Isabella hop, which is we haven't used before, which is nice. And so yeah, I'd say the bulk of the variants are kind of mostly hop related.
Gotcha.
Um,
Have you guys ever done a Baltic?
yes, we did.
Do you have, so I'm brewing my first one ever in a couple weeks. So if you have any tips or tricks on brewing a good Baltic, I would love to hear them now.
Uh, man, I think it's been like 4 or 5 years since we did it.
Yeah.
I'd have to dig it up. It
Do you
worked.
remember what the ABV of yours was?
Um, I don't think it was too high. I think it was around like six, low
Okay.
six, maybe. Does that count? What's
Yeah, that
the,
totally counts.
okay. I think it was on the lower side just because we weren't creeping up to the higher gravity beers. We didn't really, because we make the Doppelbock, the Fumigator, and the Liberator. Um, yeah, we haven't made those. We haven't made the Liberator in a while. Sorry. Yeah.
That's yeah, no worries, dude. Sorry.
I'll have to dig it up. But it turned out pretty well. But I'll just tell you what we did.
Um, so you guys are also kind of known for doing historical beers, like really old world style beers, like pre-war pills comes to mind. Can you sort of run us through your process of conceptualizing and researching and then producing, especially these throwback beers that give
Mhm.
nods to times and places in history that,
Mhm.
it's for me as a brewer, it's always kind of a trust fall because like I read these recipes and these methods and I can get a sense of what they're going to taste like. But like for you, how does developing these beers work?
Mhm. Um, I think so. When we started, I guess it was when we were. I mean, Chip had been going over there for a couple years. He went over there. He went over to Germany for some raw material reasons around when I started working at Live Oak, and then I finally went to the Brow trade show maybe 2012, which is where we kind of see our Czech and German malt and hop suppliers once a year, maybe twice a year if we go for harvest, but that's infrequent. Um, and then we stay in Bamberg, which that was kind of the root of like the really well, I mean, aside from Hefeweizen's 1,000 years old, and Pils is old.
Right.
The smoke beers and kind of the different that they're being kind of kept alive in Bamberg, and that's just like a really old method. And then the Grodzisky was also kind of a point where once we, I mean, Bayerman started making the oak smoked wheat malt, and then the Okies up in Krebs smuggled the Polish yeast that BSI had back in 2010 or something. And once we could get those two pieces, then we started brewing the Grodzisky, um, which it was just like, I mean, not much to go off of for that style. But um, the yeast smugglers, they also went to the beer library in Bamberg, I think, and also dug up a little bit of the Grodzisky beer. Um, and then we tried, I mean, we were making it with the ale yeast that had a little more flavor than we kind of than we thought it would have on paper. And so that was kind of part of and for ease of production, we switched it over to the lager yeast. But when the Grodzisk brewers had it, they were like, this is totally fine. This is appropriate. So we got the thumbs up on that. And then let's see, yeah, the pre-war pills, that one, I mean, I think like originally it was the CBC and DC met up with um, Michael Stein and Paula, and I think it was the Lost Loggers Club. Paula's great grandfather was a brewer. He brewed at like 6 or 7 different breweries in New England, and had a recipe, just kind of like a rough ingredient ratio. And it was mostly just like the barley to corn ratio was like 40% corn grits, which is a lot of corn. We're at like 37%. Um, and um, it was, I think, just kind of making it taste good using the equipment how we can, and just trying to like not steer away from the ratio too much.
Right,
Um,
right.
And yeah, I'm mostly just kind of using what we have. But then and then also like all those Greg Casey papers that came out about the American lager brewing history. Um, I don't know when he started coming out with those a couple years ago. Then he has the book now, or the first volume that released a couple months ago. There is so much good shit in there. But I love those papers. That was like realizing that the Germans did the adjunct brewing before we did and taught us how to do it, and then we
Yeah.
kind of get the credit for it, just because we make so much corn lager. But um, yeah, and then I guess they're all kind of mostly lager based. But yeah,
Yeah.
just kind of yeah, making sure it ultimately tastes good.
Right. So this is such a nerdy question now that I'm looking at it on paper, but like if you could travel to any time and place and do a brew anywhere with anyone, where would you go and what would you do?
Hmm, man.
Ha!
Um, I mean, I would. It's either going to yeah brew with Joseph Grohl in 1842. The for the first Pilsner when he was like more hops, as pale as you can get the malt, more hops, and see
Nice.
what this tastes like. Maybe that, but also would be wild to be alive during the like maybe let's say 10 or 20 years into the Dreyer Austrian beer boom where he had like four breweries in like Austria, Czech, and Budapest. Or wait, is that where he had? I forget. No, I need to brush. Oh yeah, we had four breweries and they were making like just shit tons of a new pale lager. I guess after he got the pale malt secret kilning, indirect kilning idea from the English and started making the Vienna malt and making just
Yeah.
Vienna lager and using the Saaz hops and just making just feeding, hundreds of oxen and distributing beer with oxen. It'd be just wild to see that be
That's fucking
loaded
cool. That's a
loaded
great
up
answer. Shit.
and sent around. And then also to be able to like go to the four breweries and try the beer and see what like, how consistent they could get it back in the day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that one. And then
Damn.
because then that was right before the pills
Yeah.
was created.
So can you tell me, and this is like kind of a random question, but what the heck is brimstone smoked Pilsner malt?
Yeah. um that's just the smoke malt that they use in hell,
Gotcha.
if you
Okay.
believe in that. Yeah, no, that was just yeah, it's Beechwood smoke malt. Because we had all these like Beechwood smoke, Beechwood smoke, Beechwood smoke. We're like, let's just switch it up and yeah, brimstone. That's fake.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Do you have a particular favorite smoke malt that you use regularly, or maybe it's a special thing that you've used once, or
Um, I mean the oak wheat malt that we use is really it's like a fruit wood. Like it's such a nice, wide, soft, sweet, like smoke flavor and aroma. I think I prefer that smoke. that if that's what the wheat has, you know, we don't have the oak barley malt.
Yeah.
And then yeah, vice versa. It's like, yeah, we don't have, I mean, the beechwood is I mean, I guess it's just like connected to the Bomberger beers. It's like that's the wood, that wood flavor is the style of that beer. So
Mhm.
that's, I mean, that's kind of it. I mean, yeah, that's pretty much it for us. I mean, I've had other beers that have had more of the range of kind of the um, smaller maltsters or doing like kilning malt and smoking it and trying to kind of make it, uh, you know, like base potency where you can use a good bit and it's not too much. It's like, I don't know, it's an elusive flavor. I am not envious of a maltster trying to dial that in because
Ah,
it seems, yeah, really, really hard to do. Um, yeah, and we actually last winter in, yeah, it was in November for the last brow. We met up with a, a friend who knew the brewmaster at Schlinkerla, so we actually got a tour of Schlinkerla last time we were there, and we like
damn,
watched
that's
them like
awesome.
light the fire in the kiln, and they have their like certain size beechwood logs that they have all stacked up ready to go, and they smoke like it's like one batch of kilned malt is like 4 batches of beer, and so they're just kind of like always doing the malt production, and they're smoking like they're making Munich malt is what they're smoking, which is I wish I could buy some of their malt because often the problem is like wanting to make like these darker kind of like because it's in the winter season we're making Doppelbock, Bach, Schwarzer out, but like we can only use the Beechwood Pils malt. So I wish I had Beechwood smoked Munich malt to that same kind of potency. But that's why, yeah, they're all their beers are so uh deep and complex with the smoke and the malt they're using. Like I think the Munich, I think is the majority of or a huge chunk of their more than we can get of their malt bill
Yeah,
in their beers. Um,
that's cool.
that was super cool to see. Also, like the cleanest cellar I've ever seen.
Really?
Yes, and
Oh man. All right. Well,
like
now I have a new life goal. Shit.
it's like down a yeah, it's like 3 or 4 floors down into the sandstone like rock underneath Bomberg.
Yeah. So can you just really quickly tell me about your QC protocols there at Live Oak? It's something I've always been curious about with you guys because everything is so clean and so consistent. Um, yeah, well, what are the inner workings of that world for you guys?
Um, well, on the yeast side, I mean, we just count cells all the way until like maybe day 4 of fermentation. So we just know what we're getting up to like kind of the peak cell count. And then any point we're moving it into conditioning and then before filtration. So we're always kind of checking on our cells. We have just the Anton Par C-Box DO meter. Which the seller and packaging both shares, so it gets a lot of use.
The slutty sea box?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, super because we're yeah a part of the hard part for us with just tank purging and CO2 usage having the tanks not holding pressure as much, but also just like moving beer into an empty tank when fermentation is basically done, but then it's still going into the bright tank afterwards. It's just like a lot of headspace purging. So it gets a lot of time with, yeah, just trying to keep the oxygen out within the transfers. And then, yeah, checking the packaged beer. Our canning line is okay on DOs. Um, but like, yeah, I mean, we use the Hygiena ATP test kit for kind of like double checking cleaning, but we kind of started doing some Thorin, who worked here for a long time. He was um kind of starting to expand our lab. and do incubation and make media and take bugs samples with all the beers out of the bright tank. But he left and we haven't really picking up that slack. So we were doing that for a little bit, but we're a little, light on the micro QC. So it's just kind of like really religious cleaning and
Yeah. I mean, part of what I love
clean
about you guys is
surface
like how
testing.
fucking scrappy you are. It's like we're kind of the same way, but it
Uh-huh.
works.
Yeah, yeah, it's yeah, I mean we've had some problems. Probably the biggest, I mean, with the horror story thing, that was I guess I kind of block it out sometimes, but a couple years ago we had it was like on the heels of I think like the pandemic and all the disruption, and there was like a CO2 shortage, and
Yeah.
we got I think maybe like the bottom of the barrel from, I think we get like CO2 from the byproduct of the petroleum industry down here in Texas. So we had some um, maybe higher than average soiled CO2 that came through an old tank. We have a new tank. We have basically nearly everything, but we had and we ran our tank down, and I think that's what pulled the buildup over time, or wherever it came from. We pulled some like oily hydrocarbon film because we didn't have a coalescer or a filter on our CO2 line at the time. And we started having it was lacto brevis growing in
Yes.
our bulk CO2 header
Oh my
in the film of the oil that was building up. And we were before we even had an ATP thing, we were borrowing another brewery's and their user to help us kind of track it down. And we blew down the bulkhead and we like took off the valves, and we were like, oh my God. I mean, you could even just like, we swabbed it, but then it was like, whoa.
Jesus.
Uh, yeah. And it was, and so we were getting Brevis, um, yeah. And it was making the Hefe like ropey. It was such a high
Oh,
soil all of a sudden. So yeah, it was pretty bad. Um,
damn.
we're a couple years through that. And yeah, I think we're kind of, yeah, I mean, it's always looming, I guess. It's always looming for everybody. I mean, we had just a good streak of no issues, but like wheat beer is like the most vulnerable beer. And yeah, it finally kind of got us. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's
Yeah.
yeah. So we have a sterile filter. We have I mean a coalescer and sulfur and sterile filter on our CO2 line, and clean pack like sterile filters at each bright tank as well. So if you're not filtering your CO2, you should
Do it.
do that.
Christ.
Yeah.
You said a lot of things that are going to give me nightmares tonight. All right. Lastly, really quick, how uh how have you seen the public and their response sort of to beer and taproom visitation and live oak differ since the pandemic hit, and kind of what's next for you guys? What are you looking ahead towards in the future?
Um, our tap room, let's see. I mean, we're open every day. We're a little bit outside of town, but we're pretty close to some other breweries that are kind of have opened on our side of town. We're right by the airport, but you do have to get on like, the highway to get over here. Um, but traffic has been, I'd say even I mean, with the pandemic being a hit. I think we were kind of even still kind of growing into our regular tap room attendance,
Mhm.
even up until and during that point. And then afterwards, the last couple of years, the tap room has been, I think, the best it's been. Um, and I think, the regular beers that you can just get here. I mean, we're kind of starting to sense more of the smoke beers anyway, and some like the one that promotes the disc golf course, the Death Putt around. But um, the tap room has been pretty good. The disc golf course totally helps when it may be slow for other reasons. Like we have a really good community of like regular golfers that come out
Yeah.
here.
It's such a gorgeous spot too. Like for outdoor kids like me, you could just like go bask and drink cool lagers under the trees. It's so awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I mean, it was extra nice for us that worked here during the pandemic to have that basically. I mean, we know we were still going to work, so we had the
Yeah.
whole the park in the back. And then um yeah, I think it's growing that people are appreciating that. And sometimes there's even people that are just not playing, they're not playing disc golf, but they know the park is out there, and so they're walking back and finding a table and just kind of hanging out and
Chilling.
watching people play golf. And then our tournaments that we have more regularly. I mean, we have more. Um, yeah, it's just keeps getting more and more. The course is a big part of it, and we're kind of also starting to do more events on our end too. I think we have a full-time events person now, as of that's still only new for like a year, and with the Route Fest and we have like Route Fest in January. Our anniversary party is in April, and then Oktoberfest is in the usually at the end of September. Those are our big party days, but there's just more and more other like vendor markets and other stuff that's just as more people know about the space that we have and what they can, because they need to do some, like we don't have like a crew of event people here.
Right.
Whatever's running the event that's not us, when it's not us, is they're doing it themselves. So like there's like a cactus market that's come out here a couple times, and they've brought like a whole just like huge. I mean, it was like as big as one of our big party days, just like on a random Saturday when they decided to set up. So more and more things like that. It just kind of keeps getting better, but out in the world, it's still slow on draft volume. So we're still down on our kind of production volume the last couple of years, and it's competitive, and it seems like people need to drink more
Yeah.
draft beer. I think they're gonna
Like, right.
yeah, so they gotta.
Come on, guys. All right. Well, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for letting me ask you nerdy questions and taking the time today to do this.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Dusan will be back on the next episode of this show as the host, having a conversation with a brewer of his choosing. That will be on air in 2 weeks, so make sure you tune in for that. A reminder, visit allaboutbeer.com and follow on social media. To support journalism in the beer space, check out patreon.com/allaboutbeer. I'm Lee Lord. Thank you for listening to Brewer podcast.
First Tea is your source for chamomile, hibiscus, ginger, and a whole host of herbs and botanicals. Whether you're working on a new experience or want to give your existing brews a boost, contact First Tea for the botanicals you need. Email info@firsttea.com. That's FIRSDTEA.com.
I'm Bo Baden from Sherman Street Beer Company in Allentown, PA, and I use Malteurop because the malt works great, tastes great too. We use Malteurop malts exclusively because of the quality and their service. I've been super happy with the overall performance as well. Contact Malteurop today and visit malteuropmaltingco.com.
Today's episode was also sponsored by our friends at Stomp Stickers. Stomp is a proud member of the Brewers Association that produces a wide variety of printed brewery products, such as beer labels, keg collars, coasters, beer boxes, and much more. Stomp's website features an easy-to-use design tool, low quantity orders, fast turnaround times, and free domestic shipping. Visit stompstickers.com and use code BREWER for 15% off of your first order.